We have about one more minute and then we'll get started. Thanks for joining us today, everyone. All right, we are at 1 o'clock, so I'm going to kick us off. Thanks again for joining us, everyone, for today's Mental Health Moments. I'm Linda Golick, the Health and Wellbeing e-marketing strategist in Business and Community Health. And I am joined today by Charles Latour, as always, who's our behavioral health specialist. So hello, Charles.
Hi, hello to you. How are you doing, Linda?
I'm doing good. So our sincerest apologies for those of you that tried to jump on last week and were unable to join us. We are so sorry. We had some technical difficulties. So I'm just so happy that you're all with us today. And we're a little bit closer to Thanksgiving now to talk about some of the things that we're planning to talk about. So first of all, I really want to explore this whole topic of psychological PPE, Charles. So, boy, there's been a lot of attention to the physical safety things that we've been trying to do, the masking, the social distancing, washing our hands. Let's talk about the psychological protection that we can do for ourselves.
Yeah, it's the thing that I'm so happy about, even as we look at this whole program, the kind of the progression we've utilized is going more and more towards understanding the link between physiologically, physically, what happens to us, and psychologically. And even our last meeting that we had was focused on emotional aid. We walked through some information regarding that. And now more than ever, we have to have, if part of my theory and what we've been talking about has been being able to be as aware of what's going on with us psychologically and as interested and invested in as our mental health as we are our physical health, I think this is obviously a natural progression. How do we have psychological PPE to get through the difficult times that we are enduring right now? And so we look at it as there's a number of different ways. Mary Lou, I know, is on the call and is able to highlight and walk through some of that for us. Mary Lou, if you're on, I'll turn it over to you to walk through some of those specific PPE measures psychologically that we've talked about.
And Mary Lou, just a moment, we're going to unmute you on our end. So if you can hang on for just a sec, we'll get that for you. Okay, you're unmuted.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. Well, thank you, Linda and Charles, for the invite and for being able to join this group. I know this has been well received, and it's wonderful to be able to spread the message across so many people, so many of our employers. So Linda and Charles, you teed it up very nicely. What is the concept of psychological PPE, and how does that apply to us? The term psychological PPE actually comes from the Institute of Healthcare Improvement, which we here at Bellin are connected with in many various different ways. And the idea behind psychological PPE is really a way to promote and protect your psyche, your psychological well-being, and your mental health. So it's as Charles had kind of teed it up, how do we take care of ourselves? And I know that's a lot of what you folks have been talking about on these calls. What do we need to pay attention to? Thinking a little bit about the PPE that our frontline workers put on, the mask, the eye shields, the gloves. What kind of psychological protection do we need to put in place for ourselves? And it can be anything as simple as being very mindful about the space that we create between work and home, and knowing that we need to put aside the stressors of work so that we can be present at home. It may mean for us turning off the media, not listening to media coverage that's inundated with some of the negativity, some of the concerning messages that are out there right now, and giving ourselves just a psychological break, a mental break from the media coverage that's out there. It may mean knowing when we have been struggling and knowing who we can reach out to, who we can trust, who we're grateful for, that is there for us to lean on, and taking advantage of that. It may mean being able to reframe negative experiences and reclaim kind of some of the agency over how am I coping and what do I need to do to cope. If you're a leader within an organization, it means kind of keeping an eye on your team, knowing that some of them may need a break, and giving them that space to take a day off of work, to step away from the work that they're doing and take a break. So those are the thoughts around psychological PPE and just kind of the vision for us to put in place when we think a little bit about how do we protect our mental health, our well-being, how do we protect our psyche with personal protective equipment.
I love that, Mary Lou, because I even just this morning saw an image on social media, and it was a brain, and it was showing what the brain was eating, and it was, the negative brain was taking in all that negativity, and it said you are what you ingest, and that goes beyond the physical well-being, but also the emotional. And so we take on whatever it is that we're taking in and whatever we're exposing ourselves to. And certainly there's things that we don't always have a choice with. But things like what kind of media we expose ourselves to or how much of it we expose ourselves to, we can definitely take that action to psychologically protect ourselves.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So then that really moves us into this whole idea of self-care. And we've talked a bit about self-care over the course of doing this series, but if people really want to start somewhere with taking care of themselves, what is it that they should be doing?
So yeah, let me jump in on that one. The idea is that we, for one thing, with all the body was meant to accept stress, deal with stress, and then recover. One of the things that we find more than anything that's not happening is the recovery part. So I think there's a couple pillars to recovery, and then how we make a plan to work through it. And I'll hit a couple of them. I know there's one that I'd like to defer to Mary Lou on for a moment, but I think if we look at the pillars of sleeping well, right? There's none of us want less sleep, right? Most of us aren't even getting enough, but at least enough sleep to manage ourselves well. 7 to 8 hours is what we know is optimum if we could get it. Good nutrition, good hydration, quality of movement. We might not be training for the Olympics or even a major marathon right now, but some movement that we could get in during the course of a day. Actually, someone just today was talking with me about not sleeping as well when they don't get at least a moderate degree of movement, and working from home was leading to more of that. So we were talking about how to introduce more movement, not only to feel better, but to sleep better, and then the virtuous effects that come from that. And then the last one, and the one I think we're more focused on in this forum, is thinking well. How do we stay connected with others is a big thing, and that's part of our connectedness and our thinking. I gave the example in the last meeting that we had that picking up the phone and touching with telephonically, reaching out and touching someone emotionally that way, giving thanks. And I want us to think of that in our way now. It's how are we giving thanks in this Thanksgiving season? But from those things, thinking well is key. And I think one thing I'd like to focus on, and I think it dovetails with some of what we've been talking about up until now, is this idea of our perception of stress. And what we find in understanding stress, there's really two dynamics to it. There's something called distress and something called eustress. And it's not Y-O-U. I'm sure most people on the call know the term EU stress. And we call it good stress, because that's the kind of stress that opens us up and is pointing us in the direction of maybe making a personal change. Maybe, because I look at stress as something, an adversity we experience as something that happens to us that's difficult, we either get bitter or we get better. And we're either going through it or growing through it. And if we're trying to get better, and if we're trying to grow and learn through whatever adversity or stress that we're dealing with, it takes a certain mindset to get through that. And distress, on the other hand, is that stress which we find as either internal or emotional suffering that we go through. So what we know is when we are experiencing stress as eustress, we're using it to take us to a hopefully better place. When we're feeling it as distress, that can be internalized as suffering. So here's what it boils down to, though, when you think of it this way, is who gets to determine that? Is this or this? And the answer is you do. Everyone on the call has that capacity to experience that and to grow through this rather than go through it. Get better rather than just get or stay bitter. So when we have that mindset, we're typically going to a hopefully better place with it. So, and then kind of strategy to maximize that and how we go about making that happen, those pillars. It takes something, and a strategy that I like and encourage people to utilize is 4 steps. The first one is being able to start every day with the intentionality of a deep breath, activating the system in an actual way that is going to activate the parasympathetic, relaxed focus system rather than immediately gravitate or go towards the sympathetic nervous system, which is adding stress. That intentional deep breath rather than going right to this, because I know too many people who start their day, especially if this ticked off first, a click or a ring or whatever, it's going right for this. I'm saying, please don't go there. Go to the deep breath first. Activate that system in a positive way, and we're off to a better start. The second one, and this is where I'm going to ask Mary Lou in a second to join in on, is an intention of gratitude. Starting our day with, even if it's one thought of gratitude, something we're grateful for, even more now in this time of gratefulness and giving thanks in this Thanksgiving season. When we can start our day with that gratitude, we are going immediately to a better place. So, and I know Mary Lou has some things that she'd like to share. So, Maureen, if we could loop Mary Lou in with audio, that would be great.
I'm good.
It looks like you're unmuted, Mary Lou.
Okay, thanks. Yep, it sounds like, Charles, some of what you're saying is really resonating in the comments. Love that, go through something or grow through something, absolutely, and better, not bitter. And really the sense of gratitude goes along with that. So we are certainly dealing with unprecedented times. And we talked a little bit about, as we started our conversation today, around psychological PPE. How do you psychologically put in place the protective equipment that you need? And gratitude is certainly one of the elements of that. How do you recognize those around you that are truly there for you? How do you recognize and show gratitude for those individuals that are able to pick you up when maybe you can't pick yourself up? And that's a very important part of psychological PPE, recognizing who those individuals are, and in turn doing the same for those around you. That can be your coworkers, that can be those individuals in your family. Gratitude is really an opportunity that we need to be able to facilitate. So paying attention to how do we show graciousness? How do we show gratitude for those around us? I used to work quite a bit with young children in mental health. I'm a licensed clinician, just like Charles, by trade. And when I was working in more direct service, I worked with a lot of children at a time when I had little children at home. And frankly, it was exhausting work. I spent a lot of time crawling around on the floor and playing with kids and helping them through very difficult, trying mental health times and issues that they were dealing with. And then I had to go home and be energetic and gracious for my own children, which sometimes was challenging, to say the least. when I think a little bit about the psychological PPE, and I didn't know at the time when I was going through it, but the psychological PPE that I put in place for myself, there were a few things that I did. I would often take the long way home and just clear my mind a little bit and try to focus on what was I grateful for in the day. I would get home and thankfully have a very wonderful partner who knows about the work that I do and how stressful it can be. And he'd give me a full 5 minutes to get out of my clinician clothes and put on my mom clothes. And it was a very mindful, very step-by-step process that I would go through. And then certainly the gratitude then that I had for the opportunity that I had to help the children that I was able to work with, and then also to be able to be present for my own kids through that process of putting on the psychological PPE and being very mindful of psychologically what I needed to move forward. So.
I love all the discussion on gratitude. I think it's so incredibly powerful. Just recently, I actually read the book Endurance, and that's actually a book it's a true life story of an explorer by the name of Ernest Shackleton. And he decided he was going to take these 27 men and take a ship to Antarctica and walk across Antarctica, which of course had not been done up to that point. This took place in 1914. And as you can imagine, there were a couple things that went wrong, and I don't want to spoil the book for anyone, but I decided to read this book because it was such a heroic story of resilience and endurance and getting through a really, really difficult time. And that just really spoke to me right now. And one of the things that you notice in the book, because there were actually people that kept journals through the accounts of everything that was going wrong and what was going right, they were always grateful for something. So if they got to have biscuits that night for dinner, they were grateful. Or if they were fortunate enough to kill a seal to provide themselves meat, they were grateful for it. And I think it really changed their perspective on a really, really difficult journey. So I know that just reading that book has given me a different mindset, because these were folks that were trying to survive a blizzard with a lifeboat on top of themselves in the middle of Antarctica. And I close that book and I look up and I look at my beautiful house and I think about all the blessings I have. And it just really has given me some great perspective.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And a guy named, God, I'm blanking on his name right now, but I'll tell you in a minute, from University of Pennsylvania, godfather of psychology, positive psychology movement. He actually did studies of gratefulness, which is being able to start your day and end with it is more effective than an antidepressant in any trial to treating depression. Secondly, even if you're having a great life, like life satisfaction, whatever your level, so anybody on the call right now, whatever your level of life satisfaction is, a daily dose of gratitude is going to raise that level. It's as plain and simple as that. Martin Seligman, by the way, is the name. And some of this research is in a book called Flourish. If anybody's interested in it, it's How to Live the Flourishing Life. Gratitude is one of them. And I want to, Mary Lou, everything you guys are saying is so awesome. I want to double click on one word that Mary Lou highlighted, and that is she's saying, I wanted to have this compassion, this work, but I wanted to approach my family with a graciousness, have the gracious capacity to, and I think this time of Thanksgiving, and I've been working with people on this word grace, and I want to go back maybe 3 meetings ago, somebody on the call said that's what this time calls for. And you asked me at the end of the meeting, Linda, what my word for the day would be. And I said, wow, that whoever made that comment, I think grace is what it all is about right now and what gets us through the day. And the person had said, it's what's getting me through the year. So I think a sense of graciousness, a sense of grace, this time of grace There's a great book that I mentioned at that time called The Art of Grace by Sarah Kaufman. If anybody gets a chance to read it, it's amazing. But I think there's like 3 levels of it. This spiritual grace that we get from whatever that might mean for us. The grace that we have, if we take the Elton John song about Norma Jean, you had the grace to hold yourself, how we hold ourselves in grace. But the one I think that people are really resonating with right now is the grace that we not only give, but receive. We all have to have a little grace and understanding of what's going on with everybody right now. And I love, Mary Lou, where you went with that, with the graciousness that it takes. So if we have those things, the gratitude and the grace to be able to move forward, we continue to grow through this. So with that, let me set the last 2 elements of how we do grow through this. And that, so we have deep breath, we have gratitude, and we have intention. We set an intention of who we want to be, how we want to be, even if it's one intention for the day. Let's say one intention is to connect more with one person, at least connect with this person. Connection or an intention to see a challenge today rather than a threat. And the third component is mindfulness, being more present in the moment, investing in the now. As I like to say, you can't win 10 minutes ago or 10 minutes from now, but being in the moment, being mindful, managing our attention to stay focused and mindfully aware is going to be our strategy, hopefully, to get through it. And again, giving thanks for the moments that we have. So is it okay, Linda, if I tell one quick story of
Please.
kind of what this means, kind of even to internalize it? As a personal one that I think only because it happened like right now, this time of year, but several years ago. So there was a situation where I've always been relatively healthful all of my life. I had never missed a day of work, calling in or anything. And one day I got really sick and felt really, really bad. I kind of worked from home on calls and so forth. The next day it was even worse. Then it kept getting worse. I finally went to the hospital and they said, oh, you must work in healthcare because you waited way too long to come. You look terrible. You're gray. That's the worst color you could look. We don't know how you're going to get through this, but we're going to admit you immediately. You'll need transfusions, all this stuff about how bad I was. And I didn't realize it, but I guess, and then they're like, we don't even know if you'll make it. Long story short, I started to do a little bit better. They told me that my signs were looking better, but it's still iffy. The next morning, a wonderful human being, this clergyman, came into my patient room and said, is it okay if I pray with you? And I kind of half in a daze, and my first thought was like, I looked at him like, why? Like, do you know something I don't know? I thought it maybe was like my last rites and I had taken a turn for the worst overnight. And he saw kind of my confusion and he was like, no, it's Sunday. And I'm just here to see if I can. And I was kind of like relieved and we prayed together. I remember I get a little chilled thinking about it, but I remember getting tearful at the time. And, we did what we did and he left, but it really made me think, and it with a greater sense of awareness and mindfulness and intentionality that, wow, if I was on the brink of last rites or thought I was, am I who I want to be? Did I do what I wanted to do? Was the father I wanted to be how it ended? And it gave me the ultimate sense of appreciation, something that I intellectually had, but maybe didn't have as fully, which is in this time of gratitude, every time we get to wake up and have that clock turn around twice is a blessing. Every 24 hours is a blessing that we have. And even in the darkest times that we may go through, just getting to do that in its own way is a blessing. And if we can appreciate that every day and be intentional about how we experience and go through that blessing, we will have a better day. And so to me, that's one of the things that really helped me. It was a number of years ago, and I still think of it like it was just yesterday. That helps me to be on this pathway that I'm hoping we're all traveling along. So I just wanted to share that because it's right now like 6 years to the day that I got out of the hospital. So thanks for giving me the time to share that.
Oh, thank you for sharing that, Charles. What an incredible story. And I think that can resonate with a lot of us if we think about a time that was really tough for us, you know, whatever it was that was going on with us. And here we are today. We got through that. We made it. We can reflect on just how far we've come. And if we've overcome things in the past, we can know that we can overcome things in the future.
Yes, absolutely. And to me, in this time where we're going through it, and I think part of why I thought I would talk about it is think of all the people right now, we're past 250,000, who aren't able to have that same blessing and not able to share that blessing again that we, and the families that are affected by that. And I'm hoping that as we all continue, hopefully our good health, as well as to appreciate the blessing through it, this is a time to be able to reflect and utilize this and take care of ourselves mentally and physically. There's one other thing that I would like to share as I came across this a couple weeks ago. And I thought of it as so timely, and it's almost amazing that this author wrote this before COVID, because it seems almost more meant for this. And even though it wasn't, it is timely for it. So I will read this before I start wrapping up kind of what I was hoping to touch on, if that's okay. But so it's it's just a short reading, and it's age. Age brings perspective and helps us develop clarity. And with that clarity, it dawns on you rather quickly, there's only for some people so much time left, possibly for all. There's only so many star-filled nights, snowfalls, brisk fall mornings, rainy midsummer days. So, how you conduct yourself and do your work matters. How you treat your friends, your family, your lover. On good days, a blessing falls over you. It wraps its arms around you, and you're free and deeply in and of this world. That's your reward, being here. That's what gets you up the next morning, a new chance to receive that benediction while you're buttering your toast, getting dressed or driving home from work. You stumble into those moments where you can feel the hand of God gently rest upon your shoulder. You realize how lucky you are. Lucky to be alive, lucky to be breathing in this world of beauty, horror, and hope, because that's what there is. A chance, a world where it's lucky to love, lucky to be loved. So you go until it fills you, until the sweat, blood, and hard tears make sense. You go until the light from the fading distant stars fall at your feet. Go, and may God bless you. So with that, I want to say one last thing. As we hopefully all feel lucky for what we have, grateful for what we have, giving gratitude for us and us around us, how we can surround ourselves as a community, and we get through a very dark time. I'll conclude with there's a saying from the play Les Mis, which is, even the darkest nights give way and come to an end, and the sun will rise again. So I think of that literally and figuratively. We will get through this, and we're lucky to grow through it. And I thank everybody for their time today, and Mary Lou for joining us, and Linda for hosting us. And certainly if there's any questions, hopefully Mary Lou, you could stick around and we could answer any questions. But thank you so much for your time, and appreciate your joining the call.
Awesome, Charles. Beautiful. And we've had a few people chime in that they would love a copy of that. So if you can send that to me, I'll make sure to send that out when we send the recording.
Sure.
If you do have a question right now for Charles or Mary Lou, you can go ahead and put that in the chat, and we will certainly take those. But Charles, I absolutely love that whole concept of it is true, after the darkest night, there will always be that sunrise. And I remember my grandmother saying to me at a very young age, and when you're a little kid, the little things that get you upset. And she would always say, this too shall pass. This too shall pass. And as a little kid, it was just a momentary satisfaction. But as I got older and I started to really appreciate that, and in those tough times of life, it will pass. It will pass. It will get better. There will be the dawn of a new day. It will come.
Exactly. Totally.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, I'm not seeing any questions right now. Mary Lou, do you have any parting thoughts for us today? Anything else that you'd like to share?
Other than just gratitude for this group, gratitude, Linda, for you and Charles, and the ongoing meetings that you've held, and the information that you've shared across the system and across our employers. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. Well, I'm so grateful to the two of you for partnering with us and being able to bring this super powerful resource out to our community and to our employer partners. It is just invaluable. We've gotten such amazing feedback, and we're going to continue to do these on a monthly basis. So we'll be sending out the recording, as I said, so watch for that. And then, of course, we will have another one coming up in December. But until then, I want to wish everyone a really happy holiday, Thanksgiving Day. Enjoy the day, enjoy your families. Think about everything that we have to be grateful for, because there certainly is a lot. So have a great day, everyone. Thanks so much.